The sprinklers in Pine Valley operated with Swiss watch precision. At 6 a.m. sharp, every single one of them whirred to life, spitting out perfectly measured arcs of water onto perfectly manicured lawns. It was a symphony of suburban order, a ballet of beige, a veritable Xanadu of .taupe. You get the picture. Pine Valley was about as exciting as unflavored oatmeal. That is, until I decided to spice things up. This morning, however, the meticulously timed H2O extravaganza was interrupted by a knock. Now, in Pine Valley, unexpected knocks were akin to a biblical plague. Usually, it meant the Jehovah's Witnesses were back with their pamphlets promising eternal paradise as long as you agreed to never paint your house anything other than sandstone serenity or, worse, Karen. I peeked through the peephole. Yup, Karen, whole president, enforcer of the beige, and my personal nemesis. She stood on my porch like a khaki-clad Grim Reaper, clipboard clutched in her hand like a holy relic. She even had a tiny, completely unnecessary headset microphone attached to her ear, probably communicating with the whole mothership. Just breathe, I muttered to Max, my scruffy terrier mix, who was already emitting a low growl from behind the couch. It'll be over soon. Famous last words. I opened the door. Good morning, Karen greeted me, her voice devoid of any actual warmth. It was the vocal equivalent of unbuttered toast. I trust you're aware of Article 14.6c of the Pine Valley Homeowners Association bylaws. Gee, Karen, I usually start my day by reciting the entire HOA rulebook from memory, I deadpanned. But remind me, which of the 783 articles is 14.6c again? She didn't crack a smile. I suspected she was surgically incapable of it. Instead, she consulted her clipboard. Article 14.6c clearly states excessive or disruptive displays of color that detract from the harmonious aesthetic of the community are strictly prohibited. I raised an eyebrow. Excessive and disruptive? Is that like the time, Mrs.? Henderson painted her mailbox hot pink and then tried to claim it was performance art. That matter is still under review, Karen said, her jaw tightening. However, the current infraction concerns the aforementioned article as it applies to her hat. She gestured with her pen towards the object sitting jauntily on my coat rack. My neon orange hat. My glorious, fluorescent beacon of individuality. It was a vintage trucker hat I'd found at a flea market, sporting a faded logo for Bob's Bait and Tackle Emporium. It was hideous. It was perfect. My hat, I feigned innocence. What's wrong with my hat? It keeps the sun out of my eyes, protects me from rogue sprinkler droplets. Karen's eye twitched. It is a flagrant violation of the aesthetic harmony of Pine Valley. Its color is unacceptable. It clashes. It offends. Offends who? Karen? Are the taupe houses staging a revolt? I asked. Max barked in agreement. She ignored Max and pressed on. I am issuing you a formal warning. Remove the hat from public display immediately or face a fine. She thrust a crisp white envelope into my hand, emblazoned with the dreaded HOA logo. Have a pleasant day, and remember, conformity is key to community. She turned on her sensible heels and marched back to her golf cart seriously. A golf cart? Humming some vaguely classical tune. Probably Bach, if Bach was beige. I stared at the envelope. Inside, I knew, was the official notice of violation, complete with passive-aggressive wording and veiled threats. I ripped it open anyway, just to savor the absurdity. To the resident of my address, it has come to the attention of the Pine Valley Homeowners Association that you are in violation of Article 14.6c. Your headwear has been deemed a visual disturbance and a detriment to the overall aesthetic appeal of our community. Failure to comply with this warning will result in further action, including, but not limited to, monetary penalties and public shaming. Sincerely and with great disapproval, Karen, President, Pine Valley HOA. I read the letter aloud to Max, mimicking Karen's monotone voice. Max responded with a snort and then proceeded to attack one of his squeaky toys with gusto, as if he understood the injustice of it all. Well, Max, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. Looks like we have a war to wage. A war against beige. A war against the tyranny of taupe. And it's going to be glorious. I grabbed the neon orange hat off the coat rack, plopped it on my head, and clipped Max's leash to his collar. Let's go for a walk, buddy. We need to strategize. As we stepped out into the sunshine of Pine Valley, I could practically feel Karen's eyes burning into the back of my head. Bring it on, Karen. You may have the power of the Hoa on your side, but I have Max, a neon orange hat, and a healthy dose of sheer, unadulterated spite. This was going to be fun. The South Lake Loop was our usual stomping ground. The path wound its way around a shimmering expanse of water that was technically a lake, but looked suspiciously like a giant swimming pool. Perfect for synchronized swimming, less so for, actual swimming. The water was so heavily treated with chemicals, I suspected it could dissolve a small car. As we strolled along, I took in the sights. On one side, the aforementioned lake, complete with a meticulously placed and suspiciously symmetrical family of plastic swans. On the other, a row of identical taupe houses, each sporting the same approved shade of dried dessert flower pots. It was like living in a catalog, except the models were all frowning. I passed Mrs. Abernathy, the retiree who lived 3 houses down. She was meticulously trimming her rose bushes, each one a perfect, regulation-approved shade of pink. She gave me a nervous glance, her eyes darting to my neon orange hat. "Morning, Mrs. Abernathy," I chirped. She mumbled a greeting in return, her pruning shears clicking nervously. "That's quite a hat you have there." "Yep, keeps the sun out of my eyes," I repeated, deliberately loud enough for any lurking Karens to hear. Max, sensing my mood, started pulling on his leash, eager to sniff every fire hydrant and strategically place fake rock. I let him explore, giving me time to think. The problem wasn't just the hat, of course. It was the principle. The Hoa, with its army of rules and its obsessive desire for conformity, was suffocating the life out of Pine Valley. They dictated everything, from the height of your grass to the color of your holiday decorations. And now, they were coming after my hat. My beautiful, hideous, neon orange hat. "Okay, Max," I said, stopping at a bench overlooking the lake. "Operation Orange Rebellion is a go." Max, who was currently attempting to dislodge a particularly stubborn clump of grass from between his teeth, looked up at me with a slightly skeptical squint. I swear, that dog understood more than he let on. "The key," I continued, leaning closer to him, "is to exploit the loopholes, to find the cracks in their perfectly crafted system of tyranny, to fight beige with with more orange." I pulled out the HOA warning letter and began rereading it, searching for any possible way to twist their words against them. Excessive or disruptive displays of color that detract from the harmonious aesthetic, HMMM. Max, bored with my monologue, decided to chase a rogue leaf that had dared to stray from the prescribed landscaping plan. He caught it, shook it triumphantly, and then promptly ate it. "Maybe we can argue that my hat actually enhances the aesthetic," I mused. "That it's a bold statement, a vibrant pop of color that brings life to the otherwise dreary landscape, a veritable work of art." Max choked slightly on the leaf. "Okay, maybe not," I conceded. "But there has to be something we can do. We just need to get creative." An idea began to form in my mind. A ridiculous, audacious, possibly insane idea. It involved the HOA's upcoming Community Appreciation Day event, a mandatory gathering featuring lectures on proper lawn care and demonstrations of approved outdoor furniture placement, and it involved a lot of animals. I grinned. "Max," I said, scratching him behind the ears, "I think I have a plan." Max wagged his tail, sensing that something interesting was about to happen. And he was right. Karen and the entire Pine Valley HOA were about to get a whole lot more than they bargained for. The age of beige was about to come to an end. Or, at the very least, get a whole lot more orange. Back at the house, I decided to document the injustice. I carefully photographed the HOA warning letter, highlighting the most ridiculous phrases with a neon orange marker. Then, I posted it on the Pine Valley Community Facebook page. The caption read, "Just got this lovely little note from our beloved Hoa. Apparently, My hat is a threat to the harmonious aesthetic of Pine Valley. Thoughts? I sat back and waited for the comments to roll in. It didn't take long. The responses were a mix of outrage, amusement, and cautious support. A few people, clearly terrified of Karen, simply posted generic comments about community standards and following the rules. But most of the responses were on my side. Brenda Henderson, the pink mailbox lady. Tell M to shove it. My mailbox is fabulous. Kevin, the dad whose kids drew hopscotch on the sidewalk. Solidarity, my friend. They find me for chalk art. Chalk art. Deborah, the rule follower. Surprisingly, while I appreciate the need for community guidelines, I do think this is a bit much. Live and let live, I say. And, of course, Karen herself. This is a serious matter. Article 14, 6C is in place for a reason. Your blatant disregard for community standards is unacceptable. I smirked. Karen had taken the bait. This was going to be even more fun than I thought. The satisfying ping of my email notification shattered the momentary peace. I knew, without even looking, what it was. Another missive from Karen. This one undoubtedly dripping with even more passive-aggressive sanctimony. I wasn't wrong. Subject, formal notice. Violation of Article 14.6c. Continued noncompliance. Dear resident, it has come to our attention that you have disregarded the previous warning regarding your unauthorized headwear. As a result, a fine of $200 to $100 has been levied against your property. Payment is due within 14 business days. Failure to pay will result in further action, including, but not limited to, lien placement and public flogging. Just kidding. Mostly. Sincerely and increasingly exasperated. Karen, President, Pine Valley HOA. Public flogging, I muttered, incredulous. Is she auditioning for a role in a low-budget historical drama? Max, who was enjoying a nap on the couch, opened one eye, let out a dramatic sigh, and then buried his face back in the cushions. He was clearly over my Karen-related angst. 200. That was a lot of money. Money that could be used for, actual necessities. Like extra-large bags of dog treats and novelty sweaters for Max. I wasn't going to pay it, of course. Not on principle. But I needed to do something. Something to show Karen and the rest of the HOA that they couldn't just bully people into submission with their petty rules and exorbitant fines. I decided to call Brenda Henderson, the pink mailbox lady. I figured she'd be a kindred spirit in this war against beige. Brenda, I said when she answered. It's narrator name, from down the street. The neon orange hat guy. Oh, honey, I saw your post on Facebook, she said, her voice crackling with indignation. That Karen is a menace. She tried to tell me my petunias were too flamboyant. Flamboyant. Like it's a crime to have flowers with a little personality. Tell me about it, I said. I just got hit with a $200 fine for wearing my hat. I'm thinking we need to do something about this. Something disruptive. I'm in, Brenda said without hesitation. What do you have in mind? We met later that afternoon at the Caffeine Fix, the only coffee shop in Pine Valley that wasn't a Starbucks. It was a small, independent place run by a grumpy barista named Dave, who secretly hated lattes and preferred to listen to heavy metal music. He was our kind of people. Brenda arrived wearing a bright pink scarf and sunglasses that looked like they belonged on Elton John. So, what's the plan? She asked, sliding into the booth across from me. The HOA is holding their annual Community Appreciation Day event this weekend, I said, spreading out the flyer on the table. It's basically a propaganda session designed to brainwash residents into accepting their control. They're giving lectures on lawn care, demonstrating approved paint colors, and even having a pet grooming demonstration. Brenda's eyes lit up. A pet grooming demonstration? Oh, this is too good to be true. Exactly, I said. We're going to disrupt it. How? With a pet parade, I said, grinning. A parade of the most outrageously accessorized pets Pine Valley has ever seen. Brenda burst out laughing. I love it. I'll get my poodle, Fifi. She's got a whole wardrobe of ridiculous outfits. Perfect, I said. I'll recruit Kevin and his kids. They can decorate their hamster, Mr. Nibbles, with tiny protest signs. And I'll convince Mrs. Abernathy to bring her cat, Mittens, Brenda added. I'm sure she's secretly resentful of those rose bushes. We spent the next hour plotting the details of our aesthetic ambush. We decided to focus on exploiting a loophole in the whole rules. Article 8 to be stated that residents are permitted to bring their domesticated animals to designated community events, provided they are leashed and well-behaved. There was absolutely nothing in the rules about pet attire. They're so focused on color and landscaping. They never thought to regulate what we put on our pets, I said, cackling. This is going to be epic. Back at home, I started brainstorming ideas for Max's outfit. I considered a miniature version of my neon orange hat, but that seemed too predictable. Then, I had an epiphany. Max, I said, holding up a roll of shiny silver duct tape, how would you like to be an astronaut? Max, unsurprisingly, looked confused. The next day, I went to the local craft store and bought a ridiculous amount of glitter, sequins, and pipe cleaners. I spent hours painstakingly crafting a spacesuit out of duct tape and cardboard, complete with a miniature helmet made from a plastic bowl. It was gloriously tacky. Max, to his credit, tolerated my efforts with remarkable patience. He clearly understood that this was a matter of principle. Or maybe he just liked the attention. In between crafting sessions, I kept checking the Pine Valley Community Facebook page. The comments on my initial post were still pouring in, and the debate was becoming increasingly heated. Karen had even started arguing with people in the comments section, which only made her look even more out of touch and unreasonable. This is working, I said to Max, scrolling through the comments. We're winning the hearts and minds of the people, one sarcastic comment at a time. Just then, Max, who was lying at my feet, started barking excitedly. He was staring at something on the floor. I looked down and saw one of his favorite squeaky toys, a bright yellow rubber chicken. He picked it up, shook it violently, and then tossed it in the air. It landed with a soft thud. I stared at the chicken. The chicken stared back, and then it hit me. The perfect accessory for Max's astronaut costume. I grabbed the yellow rubber chicken and, with a few strategic snips of scissors and a dab of glue, transformed it into a miniature jetpack. Perfect, I said, admiring my handiwork. Now you're ready to blast off and bring freedom to Pine Valley. Max wagged his tail, clearly proud of his new accessory. The aesthetic ambush was officially on. The morning of the Community Appreciation Day dawned bright and sunny. A picture perfect Irvine Day. The kind of day that made you want to frolic in a field of wildflowers if Pine Valley actually had any wildflowers. Instead, it had meticulously manicured lawns and a pervasive sense of quiet desperation. The event was being held at the Pine Valley Community Center, a bland, beige building that looked like it had been designed by a committee of accountants. As I approached, I could already hear the soothing drone of Karen's voice emanating from the open windows. She was probably lecturing the residents on the proper way to prune a rosebush, or the importance of matching their house numbers to their mailbox. I took a deep breath, adjusted my neon orange hat, and gave Max a reassuring pat on the head. His duct tape spacesuit was surprisingly resilient, and his rubber chicken jetpack was securely attached. He looked like a deranged, slightly moth-eaten cosmonaut. As we rounded the corner, I spotted Brenda Henderson, standing proudly with Fifi, her fluffy white poodle. Fifi was wearing a shimmering pink tutu and a crown made of plastic rhinestones. She looked like a tiny, four-legged ballerina who had accidentally wandered into a punk rock concert. Ready for some chaos? Brenda asked, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Born ready, I replied. We were joined by Kevin, the dad with the chalk art-loving kids. His two children, Lily and Tom, were carefully attaching miniature protest signs to Mr. Nibbles, their hamster. The signs read "End the Beige Tyranny" and "Free the Petunias, Mr. Nibbles," understandably, looked stressed. Even Mrs. Abernathy was there, her normally prim and proper demeanor replaced with a rebellious gleam. She was holding Mittens, her tabby cat, who was sporting a tiny, hand-wear-upon sweater in a shockingly vibrant shade of purple. I haven't done anything this exciting in years, Mrs. Abernathy whispered, clutching Mittens tightly. I hope Karen doesn't recognize me. I took a quick head count. We had a poodle ballerina, an astronaut dog with a rubber chicken jetpack, a protest hamster, a purple-clad cat, and a handful of other residents who had bravely decided to join our rebellion. We were a motley crew, but we were united in our hatred of beige and our determination to overthrow the Ho. "Okay, people," I said, raising my voice. "Operation Aesthetic Ambush is about to commence. Remember the plan. We march in, we unleash the pets, and we let chaos reign." With that, we began our march towards the community center. As we got closer, the sound of Karen's voice grew louder. And remember, she was saying, harmony is key to a thriving community. We must all strive to maintain a consistent aesthetic, a unified vision of beauty. Just as she was about to launch into another lecture on approved landscaping plans, we burst through the doors. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to us. Karen's jaw dropped. Her perfectly coiffed hair seemed to deflate slightly. What is the meaning of this?" she stammered, clutching her clipboard. "It's a pet parade, Karen," I announced, my voice echoing through the room. "A celebration of individuality, a riot of color, a declaration of war against beige." And with that, we unleashed the pets. Fifi, the poodle ballerina, immediately started prancing around the room, her tutu swirling gracefully. Mr. Nibbles, the protest hamster, escaped from Kevin's grasp and scurried under the table, scattering tiny protest signs in his wake. Mittens, the purple-clad cat, leaped from Mrs. Abernathy's arms and started chasing a laser pointer beam across the ceiling. Max, in his duct-tape spacesuit and rubber chicken jetpack, took center stage. He started running around the room, barking excitedly and wagging his tail furiously. He was a whirling dervish of orange and silver, a beacon of anarchy in a sea of beige. The community center descended into chaos. People were screaming, pets were running wild, and glitter and sequins were flying through the air. Karen stood frozen in place, her face a mask of disbelief and horror. Her carefully constructed world was crumbling around her. "Stop this! Stop this immediately!" she shrieked, her voice barely audible above the din. But no one was listening. The residents of Pine Valley had finally found their voice, and they were using it to unleash their inner chaos. I watched the scene unfold with a sense of gleeful satisfaction. The look on Karen's face was priceless. Just then, Max ran past me, his rubber chicken jetpack flapping wildly. He tripped over a chair and went sprawling, landing right at Karen's feet. Karen stared at Max, her eyes wide with fury. She took a step towards him, her hand raised as if to strike him. But then, she hesitated. She looked at Max's goofy grin, his wagging tail, and his ridiculous spacesuit, and something inside her seemed to break. Her face crumpled. She let out a sob. It's just not fair," she wailed, tears streaming down her face. "I just want everything to be harmonious." And with that, Karen, the seemingly invincible Hoa president, collapsed into a sobbing heap on the floor. The room fell silent again. Everyone stared at Karen, unsure of what to do. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Karen," I said gently, "harmony isn't about forcing everyone to be the same. It's about accepting and celebrating our differences. It's about letting people express themselves, even if that means wearing a neon orange hat." Karen looked up at me, her eyes red and puffy. But what about the rules? "The rules are meant to serve us, not the other way around," I said. "And sometimes the rules need to be changed." I extended my hand to her. "Come on, Karen, let's get you up. And then, maybe we can all agree to relax a little, to let go of the beige, to embrace the orange." Karen hesitated for a moment, then slowly reached out and took my hand. I helped her to her feet. As she stood there, looking around at the chaos that we had unleashed, a small smile crept across her face. Maybe you're right," she said softly. "Maybe it's time for a little color." The aesthetic ambush had been a success. We had not only disrupted the whole event, but we had also, just possibly, changed Karen's heart. The battle for Pine Valley was far from over, but we had won a major victory. And we had done it all with a neon orange hat, a rubber chicken jetpack, and a whole lot of chaos. The initial euphoria following the aesthetic ambush was intoxicating. It felt like we'd overthrown a tyrannical regime, liberated a nation from the clutches of conformity. For a brief, shining moment, Pine Valley felt doubt-free. Of course, that feeling didn't last. The fallout started the next morning. New HOA rule postings sprouted like particularly virulent weeds overnight, plastered on every lamppost, park bench, and meticulously manicured shrub. NOTICE amendments to Article 8 to be domesticated animals at community events. All pet attire must be pre-approved by the HOA Aesthetics Committee. No glitter, sequins, or duct tape permitted. Pets deemed excessively disruptive will be removed from the premises. Hamsters are specifically prohibited from carrying protest signs. Notice: temporary suspension of all community events. Until further notice. All HOA-sponsored gatherings are suspended pending a comprehensive review of community safety. Protocols. Notice: mandatory sensitivity training for HOA board members. Board members are required to attend sensitivity training classes to promote understanding and inclusivity. The last one made me snort with laughter. I couldn't imagine Karen sitting through a sensitivity training session. It would probably involve her lecturing the instructor on the importance of taupe and the dangers of excessive empathy. The neighbor gossip was in full swing. Mrs. Abernathy, basking in her newfound notoriety, was practically giddy. Brenda Henderson was fielding calls from news reporters, eager to interview the poodle ballerina bandit. Even the rule follower, Deborah, was cautiously praising our efforts, although she insisted on adding the caveat that we should still strive to maintain a certain level of decorum. But the real storm was brewing online. The video of the aesthetic ambush had gone viral. Someone had uploaded it to YouTube with the title Irvine HOA Meltdown, Neon Hat Rebellion. It had already racked up hundreds of thousands of views. The comments section was a battlefield. Supporters praised our bravery and ingenuity, calling us heroes of the anti-beige movement. Detractors accused us of being anarchists and destroying the fabric of our community. And, of course, Karen was still lurking in the shadows, issuing thinly veiled threats and defending her aesthetic vision. I read some of the choicest comments aloud to Max, who seemed thoroughly unimpressed by his newfound fame. YouTube comment 1. This is the best thing I've ever seen. Screw the HOA. Freedom for the petunias. YouTube comment 2. These people are destroying our community. We need to enforce the rules, not celebrate chaos. YouTube comment 3. The dog in the spacesuit is my new hero. Karen official Pine Valley HOA account. This video is a gross misrepresentation of the events that transpired at the Community Appreciation Day. We are committed to maintaining a harmonious environment for all residents, and that dog's jetpack was clearly a safety hazard. The viral video had a real-world impact. Local news stations were calling, wanting to do interviews. Activists were offering to help us organize a protest. Even a Hollywood producer had reached out, expressing interest in turning our story into a movie. It was all a bit overwhelming. I had just wanted to wear my hat in peace, and now I was potentially on the verge of a reality TV show. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more absurd, another email arrived from Karen. This time, the subject line was simply, Ray, Article 8.2b, clarification. Dear resident, in light of recent events, the HOA board has determined that pet attire falls under the purview of Article 14.6c. Excessive and or disruptive displays of color. As such, your dog's spacesuit has been deemed a violation of community standards. Therefore, a fine of $500 US has been levied against your property. Payment is due within 10 business days. Further violations will result in, well, let's just say you don't want to know. Sincerely and plotting my revenge. Karen, President, Pine Valley HOA. $500? She was escalating the war. She was determined to break me, to force me to submit to her beige-tinted worldview. I slumped onto the couch, defeated. Max nudged my hand with his nose, sensing my despair. What do we do now, Max? I asked, scratching him behind the ears. She's got us cornered. We can't win. Max licked my face, as if to say, don't give up. We've come too far. I looked at him, at his goofy face, at his unwavering loyalty. And I knew he was right. We couldn't give up. We had to fight back. I grabbed my laptop and headed out to the backyard. It was a warm, sunny afternoon. The sprinklers were still operating on their rigid schedule, spraying water onto the perfectly green grass. I sat down under the shade of a towering oak tree, one of the few non-regulation trees in Pine Valley. Max curled up at my feet, his head resting on my lap. I opened a blank document on my laptop and started typing. I didn't know what I was going to write, but I knew I had to do something. I had to find a way to rally the community, to show Karen that she couldn't silence us with her fines and her petty rules. After a few minutes of furious typing, I had it. A petition. A formal request to the Pine Valley HOA to repeal Article 14.6c, the dreaded excessive color clause. I entitled it, Let the Colors Bloom, a petition to end the beige tyranny in Pine Valley. I read it aloud to Max. He wagged his tail in approval. Okay, buddy, I said, closing my laptop. Let's get this show on the road. I printed out the petition and grabbed a clipboard. It was time to take the fight to the streets. To knock on doors, to engage with the residents, to convince them to join our cause. The revolution wasn't over. It was just getting started. Armed with my clipboard and fueled by righteous indignation, I embarked on my petitioning odyssey. Door-to-door campaigning in Pine Valley was an experience. The first few houses were predictable. The residents were polite but hesitant, offering weak smiles and vague promises to think about it. They were afraid of Karen. Afraid of the HOA, afraid of anything that might disrupt the harmonious aesthetic of their beige existence. One woman, after listening politely to my spiel, even offered me a brochure on the benefits of a monochromatic lifestyle. I politely declined. But then, something shifted. At Mrs. Abernathy's suggestion, I started highlighting the financial implications of Article 14.6c. Suddenly, the phrase excessive color took on a whole new meaning. Think about it, I'd say. Every time Karen decides your flower pots are too bright or your holiday decorations are too festive, you're getting slapped with a fine. Those fines add up. We're talking about hundreds, even thousands of dollars that could be going towards, actual things you want to buy. That seemed to resonate. People in Pine Valley might be willing to tolerate beige, but they weren't willing to tolerate being robbed. The signatures started trickling in. Then, they started flowing. Brenda Henderson organized a signing booth at the local farmers market. Kevin's kids drew colorful posters advertising the petition. Even Deborah, the rule follower, secretly signed the petition when she thought no one was looking. The momentum was building. A week later, I had amassed a veritable mountain of signatures. The petition was bulging with names, addresses, and heartfelt testimonials about the tyranny of taupe. It was time to deliver it to the HOA. I marched into the Pine Valley Community Center, my clipboard held high. Karen was nowhere to be seen, but the receptionist, a nervous young woman named Tiffany, greeted me with wide, frightened eyes. To have a petition, I announced, placing the overflowing clipboard on her desk. It's a request to repeal Article 14.6c. Tiffany stared at the petition as if it were a venomous snake. I'll give it Toto the board, she stammered. I nodded, satisfied. Make sure Karen sees it, and tell her we're not backing down. I left the community center feeling a surge of triumph. The petition was in their hands. Now, all we could do was wait. The next few days were agonizing. I obsessively checked my email, my phone, the Pine Valley Community Facebook page. Nothing. The HOA remained silent. I started to worry that Karen was going to ignore the petition, to pretend that it didn't exist. Maybe she was planning some sort of elaborate revenge plot, involving the confiscation of all neon orange objects within a 5-mile radius. Then, on a particularly foggy morning, I received an email. The subject line was simply, Article 14.6c. My heart pounded as I opened it. To the residents of Pine Valley. The Pine Valley Homeowners Association has received your petition regarding Article 14.6c. After careful consideration and extensive debate, the board has voted to temporarily suspend the enforcement of Article 14.6c. Pending further review, This suspension will take effect immediately. We appreciate your feedback and your commitment to our community. Sincerely, the Pine Valley HOA Board of Directors. I let out a whoop of joy. We had done it. We had forced the HOA to back down. We had won the battle against beige. I immediately shared the email on the Pine Valley Community Facebook page. The comments exploded with celebration. Brenda Henderson, we did it. Pink mailboxes for everyone. Kevin, freedom for the chalk art. Freedom for the hamster. Deborah, well, I suppose a little bit of color won't hurt. To celebrate our victory, I organized a backyard barbecue. I invited all the residents who had supported our cause, including Mrs. Abernathy, Kevin, Brenda, and even Deborah. The barbecue was a vibrant, colorful affair. People wore bright clothes, decorated their yards with festive decorations, and generally reveled in the newfound freedom. Even Karen showed up. She looked different. She was wearing a slightly less severe outfit, and she even had a tiny, almost imperceptible smile on her face. I just wanted Toto to say thank you, she said, approaching me hesitantly. For opening my eyes. I'm starting to see that maybe, just maybe, I was a little too rigid. I smiled. It's okay, Karen. We all make mistakes. The important thing is that you're willing to learn. As the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden glow over Pine Valley, I noticed Karen sitting alone on her patio, staring intently at her laptop. I watched her for a few minutes, a sense of unease creeping into my heart. What was she up to? Was she already plotting her next move? Was she drafting a new rule, even more absurd than Article 14.6c? Max, sensing my anxiety, nudged my hand with his nose. I looked at him, at his goofy grin, at his unwavering loyalty. Don't worry, buddy, I said, scratching him behind the ears. Whatever she's planning, we'll be ready for it. Just then, Karen looked up and saw me watching her. She quickly slammed her laptop shut and gave me a nervous smile. Just catching up on some emails, she said, her voice a little too high-pitched. I nodded, unconvinced. But I didn't press the issue. For now, we had won. And that was enough. As the barbecue wound down and the guests began to depart, I decided to take Max for a walk around South Lake. The air was cool and crisp, and the fog was starting to roll in, creating an eerie, almost ethereal atmosphere. As we strolled along the path, I tossed a tennis ball for Max. He chased after it with boundless energy, his tail wagging furiously. I watched him run, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. We had fought the good fight. We had stood up to the tyranny of beige, and we had won. But as I watched Karen's silhouette framed in the window of her house, typing away furiously on her laptop, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The battle for Pine Valley was far from over. The tennis ball bounced to a stop near Karen's front yard. Max waited patiently for me to catch up. Come on, buddy, I said, picking up the ball. Let's go home. We need to rest up, because I have a feeling that the next battle is just around the corner. The temporary suspension of Article 14.6c brought a brief, glorious respite to Pine Valley. The lawns blossomed with unauthorized flower beds, mailboxes sported whimsical decorations, and even a few houses dared to experiment with bolder paint colors. It was a taste of freedom, a fleeting glimpse of what Pine Valley could be if it wasn't weighed down by the suffocating hand of the HOA. But as any veteran of bureaucratic warfare knows, victories are rarely permanent. The enemy, in this case, Karen, never truly sleeps. A few weeks after our barbecue, a new notice appeared in my inbox. The subject line was ominous, regarding pet accessories, clarification, and amendment. My stomach dropped. I had a bad feeling about this. To the residents of Pine Valley, the Pine Valley Homeowners Association is committed to maintaining a harmonious environment for all residents and their beloved pets, to ensure that our furry companions contribute to the overall aesthetic appeal of our community. The following guidelines regarding pet accessories will be strictly enforced. Each pet is permitted a maximum of one accessory at any given time. All accessories must be of a muted, natural color palette, e.g., beige, taupe, tan, gray. Neon colors are strictly prohibited. Accessories must be deemed harmonious with the overall aesthetic of the community. The HOA Aesthetics Committee will have final say in determining compliance. Bandanas, collars, and leashes are considered accessories. Exceptions may be made for medical necessities with written documentation. From a licensed veterinarian. I stared at the email in disbelief. She was targeting Max. She was determined to strip him of his individuality, to force him to conform to her beige-tinted vision of pet accessorization. She's gone too far, Max, I said, reading the email aloud. This is a declaration of war. Max, who was currently sporting a bright red bandana that I had purchased specifically to flout Article 14.6c, looked up at me with a defiant wag of his tail. He understood. Okay, buddy, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. Time for Operation Pet Fashion Show. The plan was simple, yet audacious. We would stage a pet fashion show in the heart of Pine Valley, showcasing the most outrageous and non-compliant pet accessories imaginable. We would flaunt the rules, celebrate individuality, and once again, send Karen into a state of aesthetic-induced apoplexy. The next morning, shrouded in the typical Irvine fog, I started planning. I needed to recruit the usual suspects, Brenda, Kevin, Mrs. Abernathy, and I needed to find a location, a runway, and an MC. I decided to start with Brenda. I knew she'd be on board. Brenda, I said, calling her on the phone. We have a situation. Karen's targeting pet accessories now. Tell me everything, she said, her voice crackling with indignation. I explained the new rules, the color restrictions, the harmonious aesthetic requirement. That's outrageous, Brenda exclaimed. She can't tell me what my poodle can wear. Fifi has a right to express herself. Exactly, I said, which is why I'm organizing a pet fashion show, a celebration of non-compliant pet accessories. I'm in, Brenda said without hesitation. Fifi will be the star of the show. I'm thinking a full-length sequin gown with a feather boa. Perfect, I said. Meet me at the Caffeine Fix in an hour. We need to strategize. Over the next few days, we transformed Pine Valley into a hive of clandestine pet fashion activity. Brenda designed outrageous outfits for Fifi. Kevin's kids created miniature hats for Mr. Nibbles again, and Mrs. Abernathy crocheted a rainbow-colored sweater for Mittens. I, meanwhile, focused on Max's ensemble. I decided he needed something truly spectacular. Something that would not only violate every single one of Karen's rules, but also make a statement about the importance of individuality. I ended up creating a punk rock outfit for him. It consisted of a leather jacket studded with safety pins, a mohawk wig made of brightly colored yarn, and a pair of miniature Doc Martens. It was gloriously tacky. I also designed a flyer for the fashion show. It featured a picture of Max in his punk rock outfit, along with the slogan, "Let your pets express themselves. Karen's rules be damned." We posted the flyers all over Pine Valley, secretly slipping them into mailboxes and taping them to lampposts under the cover of darkness. The day of the fashion show dawned clear and sunny. We had chosen the grassy area next to South Lake as our runway. Brenda had brought a portable sound system, and Kevin's kids had decorated the area with colorful streamers and balloons. As the residents started to arrive, I couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. This was it. This was our chance to once again defy Karen, to reclaim our freedom, to celebrate the absurdity of it all. Brenda, acting as our MC, took to the microphone. "Welcome, everyone," she announced, her voice booming through the speakers, "to the first annual Pine Valley Pet Fashion Show. Get ready to witness a display of pet couture that will blow your mind and make Karen spontaneously combust." The crowd roared with laughter. The fashion show began. Fifi, the poodle, strutted down the runway in her sequin gown and feather boa, twirling and prancing with the grace of a seasoned performer. Mr. Nibbles, the hamster, was wheeled down the runway in a tiny, custom-built limousine, wearing a top hat and monocle. Mittens, the cat, reluctantly participated, dragging her rainbow-colored sweater behind her like a rebellious train. And then, it was Max's turn. I unleashed him onto the runway. He bounded forward, his leather jacket flapping in the breeze, his mohawk wig bouncing wildly. He looked like a furry, four-legged rock star. The crowd went wild. They cheered, they clapped, they whistled. Max, sensing the adulation, started strutting and posing, lapping up the attention. As he reached the end of the runway, I spotted Karen standing on the edge of the crowd. She was staring at Max, her face a mixture of shock, horror, and something else, a thing that looked suspiciously like grudging admiration. Max, sensing her presence, stopped in front of her. He looked up at her, his goofy grin on full display. Then, he let out a loud bark and wagged his tail triumphantly. The crowd erupted in applause. Karen stood there for a moment, frozen in place. Then, she slowly shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "You win," she said softly. "You win." And with that, Karen turned and walked away, leaving Max to bask in the adulation of the crowd. He wagged his tail, basking in his moment of triumph. For now, at least, peace had returned to Pine Valley. And it was all thanks to a punk rock dog, a neon orange hat, and a whole lot of chaos.